Hello and welcome to our today's session. We are going to be looking at the concept of database dependencies. We are all aware that database dependencies are an essential aspect for us to understand how data is normally organized and how it's also related within a database. For this session, we are going to be looking at two types of dependencies. One is what referred to as functional dependency, and the next one is what referred to as transitive dependency. We begin with the functional dependency. In a nutshell, we can say that the functional dependency describes a relationship that exists between attributes within a single relation. Or in other words, we can say it's when one attribute is used to determine the value of another attribute within a DBMS system. So let's look at an example here. When you have a student number and a student name, when you are given a student number, you can be in a position to identify a specific student name. However, if you are given a student name, you may not be in a position to identify a specific student number. Reason is that you may have more than one student who share the name. So we cannot use the student name to determine the student number. However, we can use the student number to determine the student name. So in that given case, we are going to say that the student name is functionally dependent on the student number, or we can also say that the student number determines the student name. Another example is the staff number and the position. If you are given a staff number, you can quickly know the position for that particular staff number. However, if you are given a position, you might not automatically know the staff number for that. Reason being that a given position might be having more than one person. So you may not uniquely identify a staff number. For example, you can see the title manager there. There is more than one staff number who are managers. So the staff number determines the position, or we can say that the position is functionally dependent on the staff number. Whenever you are having more than one field that is functionally dependent on another field, like in this given case, you can see that the S name, the city, and the status, they are all functionally dependent on the S number. This is how we represent it. The S number is determining the S name, the city, and the status. Another example here, try to determine the functional dependency for this, and you note it down. You're going to see that the quantity is functionally dependent on both these fields, the S number and the P number. And thus, this is how we represent it, to state that the S number, the P number, functionally determines the quantity. The next is what we refer to as the transitive dependency. In the event we are looking at transitive dependency, is where we are having an indirect relationship between attributes within a table. In other words, it's when the value of one attribute indirectly determines the value of another attribute. So the value of A indirectly determines the value of C. Or in other words, we can say it's when a non-key attribute is dependent on another non-key attribute that is also dependent on a key attribute. Let's look at an example. We have this particular table, which you can see that the course name is dependent on the course code. However, because our relation has our unit code as our primary key, you also see that the course code is also dependent on the unit code. So we can say in this given case that the course name is transitively dependent on the unit code, because course name depends on course code depends on unit code. So you can say that unit code transitively determines the course name. We have another example here. The department name is dependent on the department ID. However, the employee ID, which is the primary key, is determining the rest of the fields. So we can say that the department name is transitively dependent on the employee ID. Moving forward, we have another table here that consists of a company, the CEO, and the age. You can see in this particular case, the age is dependent on the CEO, and the CEO is dependent on the company. So we can say that the age is transitively dependent on the company. We have another example here, department name dependent on department, and the department dependent on the staff number. Thank you for watching, and I believe that you have understood the concept of dependencies as well as the difference between the functional dependency and transitive dependency.